Hi, Anthony and Woodworking here, and last time we got this built-in constructed, and today we're going to be going over how we're going to get it finished and installed. So let's get started.
So in the last video, we showed you how we made the built-in as well as the drawer faces and the drawers. And I'll put a link to that video in case you haven't seen that yet. So the next step is going to be painting them. So I'm using an HVLP sprayer here, and there's the spray gun that I'll be using. And we're going to start off with just some wood primer. And I'll be diluting that with about 15 to 20% water is what I kind of found, at least with this one and my particular spray gun has worked out pretty well for me. Now, I'm pretty new to this, so I could be just dead on wrong. But so far it's been working out pretty decent. So I'm going to keep on going with it and tweak it as I need to. Definitely important to get it nice and mixed up, and then I use the filter there just to get it in there to keep the gun functioning properly. Then once we have that ready, we're ready to start spraying. And I did the priming in this spray tent for a couple of reasons. One is because I was actually doing it in different sessions. And then two, I was really playing around with this gun because this was the first time I was actually using this particular gun. So I was just kind of getting a feel for things as I was going. So it just was convenient for me to use this type of setup. And then I also made this little Lazy Susan here for my drawer faces, and it made it a lot easier to spray those. One thing I didn't take into account, I probably should have wore like the little bit better protective stuff around me because I was just full of paint by the time I was done doing this. And then after we finished up all of that, we did do a nice light sanding on all of it to get it nice and smooth. And then when we were ready to do the final spraying, I decided just to make a big room. That way I can do it all at once. So I got just really thin, cheap plastic at the box store. And I used little pieces of cardboard that I ripped into pieces to hold the staples. That way it stayed in place. And then we covered the floor as well. And you can see there we had our whole room set up. And for the paint, I'm using this urethane enamel, and for the color we chose Swiss Coffee. And for this one, I only diluted that with about 12-ish%, and it went pretty well. I didn't have much footage of it because in the spray room, I just didn't want to get the camera covered with paint. So next up was getting the space prepared for the built-in. So first thing I wanted to do is tear off the baseboard. And of course I used the razor just to kind of break the seal with the caulking up there. That way I didn't rip up the drywall. And then I just kind of temporarily set the built-in in place so I can mark where exactly I needed to cut off the baseboard over on the side. And of course the supervisor was making sure I didn't mess up this cut. He watched me very closely for that part. So then we get that out, and now we can finally actually get this into place. So we first put down the two toe kicks, and it took a while to get this all set up because, like I said, my floor is a little wonky. So I kind of leveled it out front to back and side to side using a bunch of shims until we got it exactly where we needed it. And then after that's done, we can screw them together. And then we'll also screw them into the studs in the wall behind it. So I know this is never going to move. Then the next step is to bring the cabinets back in, and we're bringing in all three of them. And when we designed this, we made sure the measurements was enough that I can account for the weirdness and it'll still fit in place. And then after I get those in, I did double check to make sure everything stayed level. And then once I was happy with it, I clamped them together and screwed them together. And I'm choosing my spots in areas that you'll never see it. So one is inside those drawer box areas, and the other one is just below the supports on the tops. And then that'll be completely hidden. And of course, I'm using that little back support there just to kind of screw that into the studs as well. So once we have all that nice and secure, it's time to put it on the face frame. And so I'm using this Thick and Quick glue here. It kind of stays in place, doesn't get runny on you as you're doing this kind of vertical work. So I get that all set up, and then we can go ahead and drop the face frame into place. And then after that, we'll be using all of those pocket holes that we did before to get it nice and secure. Now for the middle part, I just kind of started there just to make sure that I had everything lined up the way I wanted it. And then I use those pocket holes to kind of get that in, and that kind of helps keep it nice and level throughout the rest of it. And as I was doing this, I think I might have got a little bit overboard on the amount of pocket holes that I did, because I sure did a ton of them. But I do know for sure that that face frame is never going to move. And we also did have some pocket holes in those top supports as well. And then one thing you also notice on this face frame is I wanted to go all the way to the bottom. So I did do a little bit of a thicker piece on the very bottom of it compared to the part on the shelf on the top. And that was just to make sure that it had a good amount of space from the floor there, and I just thought it looked a little bit nicer that way. And I did use the blue tape there on those shelf dividers areas, just because I didn't have anywhere to put pocket holes there. So I just wanted to keep that in place. So after we had that ready, it's time to get the drawers prepared for installation. So just mark off the center line and put on the slides. And I don't know why I did that before I put on the wipe-on polyurethane top, but that's what I did. And for this one, I did do 3 coats, kind of sanding it in between each one. Next, I made these little strips of spacers because there was a lip on some of the inserts of the face frame. So I just kind of drilled those into the place where they needed to be and screwed them to secure them for some of them. And for some reason, I made this really difficult on myself. What I really should have done here is just made some spacers. That way I could line up these drawer slides perfectly, and I just set them on top of the spacers, and then I'll get you lined up. But I didn't do that because I got lazy for no apparent reason, and it actually worked out well on the first 2. It didn't really have any problems, but when I got to the 3rd drawer, it caused me a little bit of a headache. So you see the first one goes in nice and smooth. This one was a really thin spacer, so I didn't want to screw it into place. So what I did on this one is just put the wood glue and then a little bit of CA glue with an activator just to kind of hold it in place. And then once that's in, it's never going to move. And so then I just continued on, of course, with the supervisor's approval, installing the drawer there. And like I said, this one went smooth as well. And then onto the 3rd one. And I think when I did this one, it kind of slipped since I was too lazy to use the spacers to get them lined up appropriately. And you can see I'm just like sitting there fiddling with it. So I eventually ended up having to take the whole thing off and realign it. So it took a lot longer than it should have just because I got lazy. So the next part is the top. And this I had to paint separately because we didn't actually make this top until we installed the rest of the built-in, because I wanted to make sure everything fit perfectly. So I just used the same primer and urethane enamel as we did with the other ones, and you can see all my test marks on the plastic there. That's as I was dialing in the gun. So after that's done, I've got to get the drawer faces ready. And so basically I just put some painter's tape, lined up the center marks, and the pulls that I had this little ruler that showed you right exactly where the holes needed to be, so that made it nice and convenient. So I just made sure I had the backer piece in there and then screw the 2 holes through, and that will get you the holes for the drawer supports, and it'll also help you installing the drawer faces themselves. And by this time, the top was dry, so time to set it into place. And so I just kind of wiggled and finagled it there, and then just with a little extra persuasion, with a little pushing and pounding, that thing got it right where it needed to be. And then we can go ahead and start securing that in place. And with the supports that we had on the top of all of the cabinet box, I can just screw it straight through there, and this thing is never going to move. So the next part was to put on the drawer faces, and I just put a spacer up to the top there and just held it into place, and the wife screwed it in. And I used those pieces of tape with little pencil marks just to make sure I had it lined up on the sides exactly where I wanted it to be. There's many other ways to do it. I didn't have a good way to clamp this on, so this actually worked out pretty well for me. It'd be nice to have one of those tools that connects to the drawers inside, and then you can clamp the face on. But I didn't have that tool with me, so got to improvise. And luckily, the big boss had a break in her meeting, so she was able to help out for this time. And just screwing through those holes for the drawer pulls will keep that temporarily in place until you can come from the inside and then fully secure it like we're doing right here. Then after that's secured, then you can take out those temporary ones and then drill all the way through into the drawer box, and then you can fully install the drawer slides. And of course, always use a backer piece, that way you don't get blowout and ruin your brand new drawer. And these ones were picked out by the wife. She just kind of liked the style with there, so what she wants, she gets. So once we have all those ready to go, we just got some finishing touches. So right here we're putting on some shoe molding, and I just kind of cut it down to size and use the brad nails to get it in. And then we're going to come back later and kind of paint that as well to match the rest of the built-in. And then on the side wall, I needed to put like a little strip here. So I just ripped down a piece of wood and rounded over the edge, and then also tacked that into place. and that kind of covers that unevenness on the wall. On the left side, it actually got completely nice and flush, so I didn't have to put one over there. So after that, I just go and put some caulking in through all of the extra gaps. Probably was unnecessary to do painter's tape because I'm going to come back and paint everything anyways, but I did it. Sometimes I just like to do extra stuff for no apparent reason. But then we can go ahead and strip that, and it was nice and clean and good lines, and it looks a nice tight fit against the wall there. So the last step here, we're priming and then painting the shoe molding as well as the side trim and the baseboards, and then we'll go back after that and make sure that we touch up the parts where I kind of scraped and got some caulking on the wall as well, just to make sure that everything looks nice and finished. And then one last thing, just for fun, is as we were getting this space renovated, I put in some new wall sconces, and then this happened. And then the sheer look of terror, right about there.
Don't tell the wife I dropped that. All right, so that's it. We got it all done. We got it in place and threw some extra stuff on here too, and we think it looks great. Bob Barker is pleased, and more importantly, the big boss is happy with it. So I always count that as a win. So I hope you like the builds that we've been doing. We'll see you guys in the next one.